Well, Margaret Hoover says perhaps not, and the polls are proving it, even if she agrees with Cheney that Perry should have chosen his words a bit more carefully. The great-granddaughter of Herbert Hoover with us now. What do you make of that, Margaret, that what Cheney's saying is you can't go overboard with this type of language, but it seems to resonate, at least with conservative audiences, when he says stuff.
There are two elections that are going on. There's an election for a primary, and there's an election for a general election, and Rick Perry is focused on the primary. That kind of verbiage, that kind of hyperbole is speaking to something very strong in the Republican primary electorate right now. It is the same thing, by the way. Remember when Donald Trump was running on the birtherism, and his numbers went up and up and up, and that would never have played in a general election. What Dick Cheney is cautioning against, quite wisely, I think, is this really the language that we want to use in our politics? And we know that Republicans are held to a different standard when it comes to language. And I've noticed also the left has been audaciously silent on this, and I think they're simply waiting for a Rick Perry nominee to then go to the carpet.
Silent, ripping the guy a new one.
They've been handling with kid gloves, because I think that kind of language in a general election.
They want to see him be there.
I think that kind of language in a general election will be torn to pieces.
Could it be careful what you wish for? I mean, the Carter folks in 1980 wanted Ronald Reagan to be the nominee because he was this right-wing cowboy who said crazy stuff. And when George Bush Sr. won the Iowa caucus that year, they were worried because imaginary matchups that year had George Bush beating Carter, but Ronald Reagan was 10 or 15 points behind. And we know what happened. But could this be a case of the White House, Democrats in general, being careful what they wish for?
No, I think they want to run against Rick Perry because I think they feel stronger about him. I think they feel that they have a stronger case of beating him. Look, the narrative of the Mitt Romney. I think that they are more worried about matching up against Mitt Romney in a general election.
Why?
There's a lot we don't know about Rick Perry. Mitt Romney's run for president once now. He's been on the national scene for a long time.
But he's been
we know
thoroughly
everything.
vetted.
We know, but I think that Rick Perry hasn't necessarily been thoroughly vetted.
There is this old analogy, and I've kind of raised it with the vice president, about, boy, the Republicans are getting to the point where the president's poll numbers are so bad, they could run the dog catcher against the president when he was not convinced of that. But you're arguing they still have to be careful.
Absolutely. I mean, look, you're not running against a generic candidate. When you run against a generic candidate, fine, but there is no generic on the ballot. You're actually going to have a real person there who's going to have to court votes. And one of the things I'm worried about is the young generation. For the first time, the millennial generation, the 30 and unders, who I write about in my book, they are at 47% approval of Barack Obama. That is down 20 points since January of 2009. We have an opportunity to make inroads with the young, and we just need a candidate who will also appeal to them because,
Does Mitt Romney appeal to the young?
You know what? Whoever the nominee is, they're going to have to make an effort to reach out because partisan identity solidifies after 3 presidential election cycles. They voted for Kerry and Obama, so this is our 15-month window to make inroads with them.
You know, I know debate audiences are not a party crowd, but when I was listening to this, and then they were whooping it up, I think when Wolf Blitzer raised the hypothetical about a 30-year-old kid or something doesn't get insurance, 30-year-old young man, doesn't get insurance. Then all of a sudden, is in a bad way, needs medical help. Should they just let him die? And the audience says, let him die, let him die. But in other words, their view was, go ahead. We're not going to be kowtowing and be picking up the pieces of people who are somehow loosened from the system.
Look, these are motivated primary voters in the Republican primary. But that is, let him die, is not going to play in the
Well, that's my point. So does that scare the general election or the independent?
Vice President Cheney, who we're highlighting right now, was on The View today, and he said something hysterical. He said, I wish the Democrats were having a party or having a primary so they could be having as much fun as we're having at the circus. I mean, the idea is that, these are what primary processes are for. Lots is said. It goes to a narrow group of the electorate, but it isn't necessarily representative. No, it's early. It's very nobody's paying attention but us.
Two important things. That it's still early. And the one that worries me is you're watching the vice president on The View and not with me.
No, I watched him with you, but then,
That's a very good answer.
Of course I watched him with you.
Margaret Hoover, always a very smart lady. Thank you very, very much.